Having Michigan guys in here, I think 2 is enough, to be honest.
Just trying to get that out there.
At the ceiling with 1 over here with Coney.
How good does Bryce Underwood need to be for Michigan to make the college football playoff?
You know,
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Crain & Company. Thanks so much for making Crain & Co. a daily watch and listen. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. You know the deal. And remember, without you, there is no us, and we're just happy you're here. We did our post-spring SEC rankings with our buddy J.D. Piquel a couple weeks ago. Y'all really enjoyed that. We said we had our next batch coming soon. Might as well do it with the Big Ten, which has been one of the top 2 conferences. We all know that. And why not bring on a guest that not only played in the Big Ten, talks about Big Ten football and all of college football for the Big Ten Network, and another former Michigan guy in Jake Butt. Let's put it together.
Let's go, JB.
What's up, y'all?
go blue. Go blue. Hey, you know, we can't get enough Michigan guys out here, right?
Well, y'all are everywhere.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Talk to him, man.
Yeah,
Tell him.
y'all are everywhere. Obviously, David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback to my left. Blaine Crain, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver to my right. And really where I want to start is, to me, this is one of the most fascinating conferences. It usually is in college football. But when you look at the turnover at the top, at the quarterback position, and really it's kind of filtered all the way through. I mean, there's a lot more newcomers if you count the transfers, David, like Mendoza going from Cal to Indiana, as opposed to some solidified guys like we have with Drew Aller at Penn State, Luke Altmaier at Illinois. And I'm telling you, Damon Williams Jr., I think, is going to end up being a fantastic player a lot of people don't know about yet. But Jake, you and our buddy Adam Brenneman, former Penn State tight end, I always wondered what y'all would call a podcast if y'all literally made one together. The tight end bros. I know that may be a bridge too far. But, y'all put out a list of your top 9. So for the SEC, we did half the conference with 8 teams. Y'all did half the conference, or at least from what I saw, 9 of the 18 in the Big Ten. And we want to go ahead and bring your list up and go through it really quick so people can see, because we have a list of our top 9 that we consolidated. So, Jake, you have Nebraska at 9, Iowa at 8, USC at 7, Indiana at 6, Michigan at 5, Oregon at 4, Illinois at 3, Penn State at 2, Ohio State at 1. I want to start off before we get into our list, Jake. How hard was this to put together for you? I mean, the top 2, okay, I think most people are going to have either one of those teams there. I know Adam had Penn State 1. But, man, I can't remember a year where the Big Ten's been this wide open from 3 through 9, 3 through 10, really.
Yeah, I mean, these lists are always challenging. I mean, it's fun. It's a good exercise. There's a lot of speculation, and especially in today's environment, you mentioned all the new quarterbacks, but it's new players. There's just significant roster turnover across the board. That's just that's where we're at for college football. I feel pretty good about the top 5 or 6. Like I think those 5-6 teams will be the top 5 or 6 teams in some order, but as has been the case with the Big Ten for a while, the meat, that middle portion of the conference, there's going to be a ton of parity and wins and losses. Who knows what that middle pack is going to end up shaking out and looking like?
Yeah, it's a fascinating storyline for me to follow.
I just want to get one point of clarification here before we read off our list. We were going based off who we think has the strongest rosters right now, not necessarily taking into account the schedules or who will finish in certain places. What exactly was the metrics that you used when you were making your list?
Yeah, I guess we didn't get too specific. The prompt was basically, how would you rank the top teams in the conference? So in my mind, I did factor in the schedule. And the big controversy there is Illinois. How could you have Illinois above Oregon? Well, not only are they the most experienced team in the Big Ten with a proven quarterback, they have coordinator continuity, but they also have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten as it stands right now, of course, subject to change. But I really clearly am high on Illinois.
Yeah, and with ours, just the one we put together, again, like Coach said, we did not take schedule into factor, but I have heard, Jake, some people are saying that Illinois could be last year's Indiana this year with that kind of lighter schedule. A proven guy at quarterback, which, Rourke was a proven guy, I thought, at Indiana. Not maybe to the level or the notoriety that Altmaier was, but we did not factor in schedule with ours when we get to that list.
Well, when I look at your list, and obviously we're going to get into it, having Michigan guys in here, I think 2 is enough. To be honest, I'm already at the
trying to get that out there
at the ceiling with 1 over here with Coney. Michigan's an interesting team this year. What's your thoughts on the quarterback situation for Michigan? Bryce Underwood, Mr. Walk on Water. Here's $15 million. Now go win it all for us. I was wondering because I know we're going to go down your list, but as being a Michigan guy yourself, tied in, the ins and outs of this program. What's your thoughts on Michigan this year?
Yeah, there's a few things I know, and there's a few things that remain to be seen. And the true reality is Bryce Underwood is far and away the most physically gifted and talented quarterback that has ever stepped on campus in Ann Arbor. That's undeniable. He looks like he could play tight end. The ball jumps out of his hands. And I call the spring game, what really stood out is all the coaches, Sharon, the coordinators, the players all talked about this guy approaches the mental side of the game like a veteran quarterback. And I think that's really, really encouraging because Michigan asks a lot of their quarterbacks, you have to get formationally set up, shifts, motions. It's a big piece of their offense. And that's usually the part that limits young guys. But this is going to be a full battle. Sharon Moore's high on Mikey Keene. He was injured, missed most of the spring, started to throw towards the end. But yeah, I think when you factor in this quarterback position, you have to look at the big picture, which is Michigan believes they're going to have a top 10, top 5 defense in college football. That's going to keep them at a minimum in every game. So the question is for Sharon and whoever's involved in making that quarterback decision, you might risk starting a freshman that's extremely talented. That may come with and likely will come with freshman mistakes and mental errors. Those errors could lose you games, whereas Michigan believes with their defense, as long as they don't lose games, they're going to win a lot of games. So that's where the complexity of this equation. I'd imagine it's similar to a Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy. I bet both of them play at a minimum, especially early in the season.
One follow-up on that, because, Jake, a true freshman quarterback is going to take their lumps at the highest levels of college football like this. Now, when we talk about the schedule, Michigan won't have Penn State in the regular season, but you're obviously going to get the Buckeyes, and you have this week 2 matchup on the road with Oklahoma in the SEC, which I think a lot of us, we can't wait for that matchup. So how good does Bryce Underwood be? And a lot of this is the assumption he's going to be the guy, and Mikey Keene's not going to make a run at this in fall camp. We still have a lot of summer left to go, but how good does Bryce Underwood need to be for Michigan to make the college football playoff?
I hate to approach it like this. I'm almost looking at it as he doesn't need any help being good or great. He's physically gifted. He's going to make wow plays that we're just not used to seeing at a quarterback in Ann Arbor. For him, it's going to be about limiting those mistakes. Can he take the check down when it's there? Can he get the players lined up? Can he have full command of the huddle? But
throw the ball away. Yeah.
Can he throw the ball away? Exactly. And that's a incompletion that everyone will be celebrating on the sideline. But guys, last year, the entire offensive system was dysfunctional. Now you have an offensive play caller that has experience calling plays and has experience structuring game plans. You went out and added some talent to the wide receiver room. They still feel great about their tight end room. They feel like they have 2 great running backs, and offensive line has been a staple for Michigan. They're not telling us that they think this offensive line is going to win the Joe Moore Award. But at this point in time, they think the offensive line, where they stand right now, is much further along than where the offensive line stood at this time last year. Remember, Grant Newsome was the tight end coach, was a first-year offensive line coach when Sharon got promoted. So he's going to take a step forward. And then they went out and hired additional coaches to help the offensive line. So they're doing everything to create a stable environment around the quarterback position, but particularly if it's a young guy, freshman, and Bryce Underwood.
I'm fascinated to see, obviously, what he turns into. The comparison, I wonder if he's going to be a little more Lenoris Sellers or maybe a little more DJ Lagway, 2 big guys, 2 guys that can go run. I'm interested to see it. But all right.
We'll take a combination of both.
Yeah, that's exactly right. DJ Sellers, there you go. All right, our list. All right, I'm going to go from 9 to 1 here, Jake. And again, the schedule was not taken into account. These are who we think are the 9 best teams post-spring going into the Big Ten. 9, Washington. I'll say this again. A lot of people are talking about Bryce Underwood. I get it. A lot of people are talking about Dante Moore. I get it. Julian Sand. I get it. If you have not seen Damon Williams Jr., this guy is the best quarterback that nobody is talking about. Which ability? I'm going to tell you who he kind of reminds me of a little bit. He reminds me of Nick Marshall a little bit from Auburn. Like, he's that talented, I think, with his feet. Laterally, he's incredible. I think he is a natural passer of the ball enough to be effective. But then you look at Washington and what they have around them. You bring in Amari Evans from Penn State, who's a quality player at wide receiver. You bring back Denzel Boston. I think the defense is going to be just fine. And then a guy that Blaine recruited and finished in the top 2 of this guy in JUCO, Quentin Moore at tight end. We almost got him.
First offer.
Yeah, first offer.
Really?
Blaine was
Nobody
his first
found
offer.
him. I saw him. I watched 2 clips.
Yeah.
The first 2 clips. His second clip was hurdling a guy.
You were like this
I
after the first.
immediately got on the phone with the head coach. I was like, I found him.
And remember, he went down against Weber State last year and missed the whole year, but before that, had a couple huge catches.
Great play. Shower
6'4", 260, and an absolute stud. All right, let's go 8. USC and Lincoln Riley.
Woo!
I actually feel worse about this one than maybe anything else on this list, just because Jake, when you look at the way these Lincoln Riley teams have been put together, we know the talent offensively is there. Bringing in D'Anton Lynn, we saw what they did early in the year against LSU with a big win, but it kind of faded, Is the depth on defense good enough to be able to have USC even finish in the top 10 in this conference? Look, at this point, like Lincoln Riley, I don't know. Like I don't know if he can be a all well-rounded, full balanced coach to be able to win in multiple ways, Jake, and you have to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the more underrated pieces of team success. We don't talk about it. We like to talk about the sexy headlines of head coaches and quarterbacks, but coordinators really play a big factor. It's why I like Illinois. And it's why, to your point, D'Anton Lynn, that defense looked completely different, night and day from one year to the next. And they didn't have high level talent. I'm just talking about the physicality they played with, the willingness to tackle, and the discipline has a long way to go, but it was significantly improved. I trust that Lincoln Riley is consistently going to have one of the top offenses in college football. That's just who he is. D'Anton Lynn, now another year coaching these players, working with Lincoln Riley. I like that slot. They're a team that could definitely rise depending on, how well they play, how early in the season. But I love your pick at Washington too. Damon Williams, I just wanted to say this. Damon Williams, Jed Fish was my offensive coordinator, said he's the fastest guy on the team. I was like, oh, he's the fastest quarterback? Like, no, he's the fastest guy on the team. 4.3 speed.
He's a freak,
at quarterback.
Jake. He's a freak.
He is a freak. And you mentioned Quentin Moore. I got to shout out Decker DeGraff. He was a freshman tight end last year, and I think he has a chance to compete for a Mackey in his career. So I just wanted to circle back on Washington and mention that as well.
Good to have depth there.
Oh, we'll get the time. Look, ain't nothing. You can line up in 12 personnel. You can whip a lot of ass in this game, buddy.
Love
Jake,
that. Yes.
One high-level question, since we're talking about these 2 programs here who are entering their second year in the Big Ten. What do you think about the trajectory for USC and Washington moving forward, having to travel across the country and playing in a new conference and everything that entails?
I don't want to downplay the travel, but I do think for football, it doesn't affect, because you're playing one game a week and you have resources and, the good coaches, they plan and account for that. And the way the Big Ten structured the schedule, like it's not nothing, but I do think it's overblown a little bit. These guys can find a way to work it out. This feels like such a critical year for the Trojans, though. I mean, when you pay Lincoln Riley the dollars that you gave him, the whole sentiment around the program change. You have a little success in year one, and then they trend backwards. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, we're not paying you. We're paying you with the expectation of competing for conference titles. That's got to be the expectation this year. And it doesn't feel like that's a certainty at all, where it feels like Washington is a little bit more the opposite. I love the Jed Fish hire, a bit of a quieter hire. This is a historic, proud program. They're building slowly. And I think that's going to bode well for their future, particularly with a young quarterback in Damon Williams. He could be a top 3 quarterback in the conference when it's all said and done this year. He's that talented.
You talk about different than Will Rogers. You couldn't be on 2 opposite ends of the
Also a great quarterback.
Yeah, which we like Will a lot. I will say, to your point, Cone, is there any school university in the world where the director of operations and the travel coordinator is more important than like USC and like some of these schools that are Cal and Stanford? Like you've really got to dot your I's and cross your T's because, again, the travel, I'm with you, Jake. It's one game a week. You have all these resources, but you need to be as organized as possible to try. And I heard Nick Saban say this, and he's exactly right. What we tried to do, the reason I thought we were so consistent on Saturdays is because every Monday was the same, every Tuesday was the same, every Wednesday, every Thursday, every Friday. And when you do that, most of the time, every Saturday is going to be the same. But you throw these quirks into it.
I think a bigger factor than the travel, especially for a team like USC, is the style of football you're going to play in late November and early December, and you're going up to play a Michigan team who may not throw the ball a single time in the second half, and you're going to get 12 and 13
I think they will now.
And it's coming right downhill at you.
All right. So let's get to 7 here. Another quarterback, Iowa. So I got a groomsman at my wedding. Y'all have met him, my boy Mixie.
Love that guy.
He's a position coach at South Dakota State. I saw when Gronowski transferred to Iowa, I called him. I was like, all right, I've watched the kid play. How good is he? He was like, Jake, he's the best quarterback that Iowa's had since I can remember. Literally since I can remember. He's a tough ass. That's a high level of ball at that part of the FCS. I think he's a perfect fit for Iowa because the funniest part about Iowa is I know what Iowa's going to be everywhere else. Yeah. Like they're as consistent as it gets. And unfortunately for them, that's been consistent with really bad quarterback play. We can talk about Petrus, we can talk about McNamara. But I look at Gronowski and his ability to create, his ability to not screw it up, his ability to win. Yeah. He's a winner, won the Walter Payton Award in the FCS. Jake, what do you think about Iowa?
Yeah, they're another team. I would absolutely not be shocked if they finish in the top 5 or top 3, and they do it their way. I love the way Kirk Ferentz is such a phenomenal coach. Yeah. I don't even have kids yet, and I would send my kids to play under Kirk Ferentz in a heartbeat. And I completely agree with you. Of defense is predictable. It's going to be one of the most disciplined top units in college football. They don't do anything exotic, but what they do so well. It's 11 guys all operating as one. Special teams is going to be phenomenal. Yes, you upgrade at the quarterback position, but one thing that hasn't been discussed enough with the Hawkeyes, when they've been successful, gosh, they recruited big, corn-fed, bruising, Midwestern beasts in the trenches. Yeah. And that set the tempo and it complemented their style of play defensively. The offensive line was a little bit better last year for sure, but it hasn't been to standard in recent years. That's another piece that's going to factor into how much you can get out of your quarterback. That's the unit I'm watching for the Hawkeyes, right behind quarterback, to see what's going to decide their fate.
Well, second best team when it came to running ball in the Big Ten. But there was only 4 teams who threw for less yards than Iowa.
Well,
and 3 of them were service academies.
Yeah, it's a pass pro thing. I mean, Iowa's offensive line could go for it. They could block. Center could block back. I mean, they could get up there and line up, run the power, and be fine. It's when they had to set back against some of these guys in the Big Ten coming off that edge, or God forbid they got in 3rd and 7 and they were absolutely cooked in a predictable down.
Hey, we did pretty well in the Iowa unders.
Yeah, we did really well. I think everybody.
They're no longer a lock.
Jake, I will say the most exotic thing Iowa does though is put white guys at corner, and it works out.
Exactly.
I wonder if they got another exciting white there. Let's talk about something that separates the men from the boys. I'm talking about your health. The Emerson multivitamin from Responsible Man is packed with 33 key ingredients that support your body and give it the energy you need. And new for this season, Responsible Man has just launched Theodore Protein. That's right. With 25 grams of clean, American-made protein power, it's fuel for men who lead, protect, and show up strong. No soy boys and no shortcuts. And American men, well, newsflash, guys, we're on average 30 to 50 grams of protein short. We're not beating China with those numbers. That leads to fatigue, slower recovery, and muscle loss over time. I don't care how many push-ups you do. And quality protein supplements like Theodore help close the gap fast, clean, and strong. Plus, Responsible Man's a Daily Wire Ventures company. So you know these vitamins and protein, they're made right over here in the good old US of A with good American quality from the back-to-back World War champs. Now, we wouldn't endorse this if we didn't believe in it. This vitamin is part of our daily routine. It's like watching game tape, remembering names, and giving you amazing content. It's also a secret for living a long and healthy life, which is important as well. So here's the deal. Right now, you can take advantage of Responsible Man's Father's Day sale. Get your first order 50% off. Go to responsibleman.com and use our code BOOSTER, BOOSTER, at checkout. But hurry, The deal won't last. That's responsibleman.com. Use code BOOSTER for 50% off. All right, at 6, and again, another quarterback that I think is an absolute stud. I wanted him to go to Auburn. I'm not going to lie, because he went to Jordan-Hare and whipped Auburn's ass, and that's Fernando Mendoza in Indiana at 6. When you look at the roster around, because that's going to be my question with Indiana, how many years we can talk about, the schedule last year, whatever, they had talent, all right? They had talent. But how many years in a row can Indiana be solid around the quarterback position? And I'm not talking about just the first 22. I'm talking about the first 44. I'm talking about that. Can they roll with 7, 8 offensive linemen where when you have that inevitable injury, a guy can kick inside and they can fill in and still be fine? Defensively, same thing. How deep can they go from the edge rushing standpoint? How deep can they be at corner? Jake, with this Indiana team, do you see that Cignetti can maybe just turn this into a factory with quality players and quality depth?
Yeah, that's ultimately the question, really, outside of like the Ohio States, Michigan, Oregon's, the team that they have 5 stars on their bench. I have Ohio State as my number 1 team, and they're replacing everyone on defense with 5 stars and future NFL players. So that's always the question. I love what Cignetti's done there. I was working the game, Notre Dame, Indiana, disappointing showing for the Hoosiers, but Cignetti came out and had an awesome conversation with us. And this was before Mendoza committed. He said, I think we're going to get a guy, and we really, really like him. They think he can be special. And we obviously saw the season that Curtis Rourke had last year, just a phenomenal. It was a Heisman campaign at one point. They return guys. They got Elijah Surratt back at receiver, I believe. They've went to the transfer portal to fill in holes across the offensive line. And I just love his philosophy too. So I called a Purdue game last year and I called an Indiana game last year. And what Purdue did, they went and got former 5 stars and 4 stars from Georgia that never panned out. Well, it didn't really pan out for Purdue. What Indiana did is they said, let's go and recruit production over potential. So Cignetti brings guys that he was familiar with that produced at a lower level, and it translated for the most part to the Big Ten play. So I just kind of connect with that philosophy of roster building more so, with what Cignetti's doing there for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, and the swag that Cignetti has is just so different.
There's no shortage of that. That's for sure.
He ain't afraid. They ain't afraid of nothing.
Take Indiana to the college football playoff in year 1. That's no small feat.
Yeah, you can't tell me anything.
The schedule, was a big critical point last year in that. So I want to read off their schedule for 2025. This is Indiana, Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, Illinois, all at home. Then on the road at Iowa, on the road at Oregon, Michigan State at home, UCLA at home, at Maryland, at Penn State, Wisconsin at home, and at Purdue.
4 through 6. We will learn a lot about the Hoosiers. And that Indiana-Illinois game,
that's huge.
That's going to be, game day might be there. Seriously, that game is going to be massive with literal conference title, playoff title implications with where both these programs are.
If they make it this year, there'll be no questions.
No, there'll be no doubt.
From a team that was, plus 150,000 last year to win the national championship, to make the playoffs. It's a good bet.
Yeah. And the fact that
you bring back Mendoza's a dog. Trust me, watch him play. You bring back your 2 best receivers from last year. That's going to help your quarterback. We know Kirk Cignetti coach team. They're going to be fundamental. So, Indiana, a team to watch out for.
Experience at all 3 levels defensively, too.
Both your corners.
D-line, linebacker, corner,
You just got to avoid the injury bug, because that's where I think it could still get them, because you're still building that roster. All right, Jake, we have Illinois at 5. I would love for you to go into why you had Illinois at 3, correct?
Yes.
Right behind Penn State. Give me your best sell on it. Sell me this pin on Illinois.
Okay. Well, they're coming off a 10-win season. They were in the playoff conversation. They were disrespected last year. Bielema's getting on Twitter or X and making his case. South Carolina and all the SEC loves to beat their chest and talk about how grueling that schedule is. And what did Illinois do? They dictated the terms of that game and dominated South Carolina and completed a 10-win season. And now they return 18 of 22 starters. They return both coordinators. They return a head coach in Brett Bielema, who I think is a phenomenal and highly underrated head coach. In quarterbacks at college, you have to bet on quarterback play. Yeah. We heard last offseason Bielema telling us, hey, Altmaier, he's going to take that step. His first year, he was one of the most sacked and hit quarterbacks in all of college football. Well, last year he takes that massive step. He gets protected a little bit more, and I think the run game will improve and has to improve. That's really what Bielema wants to be. That's only going to further help Luke Altmaier. So this is one of the more experienced teams in all of college football, a favorable schedule, return 18 to 22 starters, both coordinators, head coach. The stars are kind of aligning. Like, this is just aside again from, Ohio State's or Oregon's, the stars kind of have to align for some of these teams where it all works out for a magical season. I'm just doing the math here and saying this has the potential. This has to be the year for Brett Bielema. The injury bug is obviously the one thing to consider for Illinois.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. I mean, you have those schools where every 3 to 4 years is when it's going to hit. Not that you're going to have bad years outside of that, but, if you're going to get to that 9-10 win mark, which you're going to have to be. Now, in the Big Ten, the SEC, I'm interested to see if a 9-3 team gets in there.
But listen to this schedule, though. Western Illinois, at Duke, Western Michigan, at Indiana, USC at home, at Purdue. They get the Buckeyes at home. Then they get a bye week before they go to Washington. Rutgers at home, another bye week. They get Maryland at home. They go to Wisconsin, and then Northwestern at home. There's a lot of wins in there.
Schedule,
no, but there's
you
missed some good people.
Yeah, no. If we're on the, I will say though, your ass better not sleep on it at Duke week 2 now.
No,
with Manny Diaz.
All right, Washington. You said.
I mean, yeah. You said at Washington. That's going to be the toughest road game. But that Duke game early. Duke's going to have nothing to lose. I just wonder if Illinois, how do you handle being the hunted?
Right.
Like, because a lot of people, and rightfully so, we've brought up the points, are going to have them high up there. Now that you're hanging out at the top of the treehouse, how do you operate when that 9 walks in and looks at you? All right. This is where, again, 1 and 2, a lot of people are going to have 1 and 2 the same. We have Oregon at 4.
Okay.
Coney, we haven't seen a ton of Dante Moore, right? He's gotten some run. He's a little bit of an unknown. It's just hard for me it's going to be hard for me to not have Oregon in the top 4 every year in the Big Ten because of how well they recruit the line of scrimmage. And then just Dan Lanning and his philosophy. And I know they got the brakes beat off of them by Ohio State in the college football playoff. But 9 out of 10 times, Dan Lanning has these guys fired up, ready to go, and prepared. And damn, are they talented on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and remember, Dante Moore, 5-star quarterback coming out when he went to UCLA, and I believe it was Chip Kelly was the head coach when Dante Moore was first getting some of his starts and started as a true freshman. That's when UCLA had a better defense than they did an offense, and they were winning a lot of games like that. Now transferred over to Oregon. Jake, I just want your thoughts. I mean, this was the only undefeated team in college football a season ago until the college football playoff started, and then the Buckeyes ran them out of the Rose Bowl. Where is Oregon better than they were last year, and where are they worse?
Well, where they're worse immediately, and this is why I'm just concerned, or I guess I have some hesitation that, to put the expectation they're going to have a similar season. It's the quarterback play, and Dylan Gabriel was perfect for that team last year. Dante Moore has all the talent in the world. I remember that was a big win for Oregon when they got. You're saying you got a guy with starting experience that's a 5-star, and he's willingly going to go sit on the bench. And Dante had a great response to that. He said, "Hey, I want to learn and develop," and I thought that showed a ton of maturity. But what you would hope is. We feel really good about our quarterback position. Dante Moore is going to be the guy, period. And we haven't heard that yet. Now, the good thing is Oregon's here to stay because the alignment and resources and commitment from top down to the university athletic department, NIL collective, all that, they are going to recruit. They're probably going to tamper. They don't care. Everyone's tampering a little bit.
Who doesn't?
They're going to have talent and depth at every single position. And the line of scrimmage is something that's extremely underrated, was a key point of their success last year. That's Big Ten football. They have the opportunity to dictate the terms of play. So Oregon's here to stay. I just think that the ceiling will be limited by what they get out of the quarterback.
And Evan Stewart going down, that's just
tragic.
Terrible. I hate it for him. This is a big year for him heading in the NFL draft. And that was a guy, I think, Dante Moore, especially vertically, could really rely on early to soften up on the deep end. And because, Tez is gone in the NFL, and he was a guy they just throw the bubble screen or throw the now or throw a slant to, and he'd make 2 guys miss and take off. But
I promise you one, Oregon's not going to be slow.
No, they
they're
won't
not
be
going to
slow.
lack talent. That's a skill position. I promise you that. I think Oregon belongs in front of Michigan. I think Oregon has a better roster, and I think Michigan still has a little bit more to prove. I know it's new quarterbacks, but I trust Dane Lanning a little bit more, and I think Oregon's going to have one of the best D lines and pass rush in the country. And what is that going to help? That helps you on the back end. I think more is going to be fine, and just the weapons they have walking around. Trust me, Phil Knight's got all this money for a reason. Oregon's going to be pretty damn good.
And Michigan's next on the list?
Michigan is at 3. Michigan is at 3, and this was probably one of the biggest disagreements that we had when we were consolidating this list was, should Oregon be at 3 and Michigan be at 4, or should Michigan be at 3 and Oregon be at 4? I think, and I was me and Coney actually when we were walking into wardrobe, we were talking about it. I think there's a little bit of a recency because of what Michigan was last year, right? And kind of, obviously taking a step back, but then beating Ohio State and beating Alabama in the bowl game. I still think people kind of have a little bit of recency bias of, well, new quarterback, this Michigan team lost a lot of guys. You look at the NFL draft, this, that, and the other. But you look at that roster again, especially up front. Because give me that. Just give me the offensive line, give me the defensive line, and let me build around it. I mean, Michigan's, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, I still think they're going to be damn good, man. I think they can line up, run the ball, and stop the run. And if Bryce Underwood is half of what people think.
And Wink Martindale returning as
that was big
coordinator.
Yeah,
and you saw what he was able to do with that second and third tier of guys in the bowl game against an Alabama team who started all of their starters and started Jalen Milroe. I mean, can you talk about that side of the ball a little bit, Jake?
That's the key is, they did lose some talent, but the bowl game, that's the exact same defense you're going to see here week 1 for the most part. Like that, the bowl game against Alabama, like you said, David, against Alabama starters, Michigan shut them down. And talking to them this spring, they're 6 deep with NFL talent at the interior of their defensive line. Those guys are going to be fresh and dominant. They feel excited about their edge rushers. Michigan has become a complete D-line factory. Their linebacker room also full of veterans and probably the most athletic linebacker room Michigan has had in a really long time, led by Ernest Hausman and Jayshon Barham. I will say, Rod Moore. We're counting on Rod Moore. He's a veteran presence. Kind of expected him to be further along in his recovery. Michigan would certainly benefit from him being able to play. That's a bit uncertain right now. And then depth at the cornerback position is another concern. They can afford injuries at other positions, but they don't have a ton of depth at the corner position. That'd be my only concern for that unit.
Yeah. All right. So this, to me, with the top 2, because we didn't factor in schedule, because I think if we factored in schedule, this may be a little bit different because Penn State's got to go to Ohio State, correct? I'm not losing my mind there. Penn State is on the road at Ohio State.
Yes.
So if we factored in schedule, we may have Penn State 2 and Ohio State 1, but we have Ohio State 2. And here's the reason that I have Penn State at 1 is I think Julian Sayin is going to be awesome. Everybody is over here just glazing Arch Manning, and I get it. I think Julian Sayin may outplay him week 1. We're going to have to see. Don't really know enough about both. Know more about Arch than we do about Julian, but I know the talent Julian has around him. But when I look at Penn State, you return Drew Aller. You return 2 stud running backs. You got both of them in Singleton and Allen. I know you lost Amari Evans, but you brought in Pena from Syracuse, who's a really, really, really good piece. And the only place I'm worried about Penn State is wide receiver depth. I know that helps. Some people have talked about linebacker. I love that they got in Amari Campbell from North Carolina. I think he's a plug-and-play guy, about 6'2", 230. But I look at what Penn State is bringing back with Drew Aller, and you talk about coordinator, fluidity or whatever. I think Kotelnicki was the most underrated hire of the college football season that not enough people talked about. But Ohio State at 2, because I think they're when you compare them to Penn State, I think the rosters are somewhat similar, right? Dennis Sutton's a dog on defense. Penn State's got cats running around there. I just think the quarterback position with Drew Aller, we know more about him, man, but I think you could be right either way, but we have Ohio State too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Once again, it's a toss-up. You could be right either way. There's certain areas of strength and weakness, whereas, Ohio State, Their defensive line depth is a concern. Aside from that, I feel good about their linebackers, safeties, secondary, obviously wide receivers. I think Ohio State's offensive line has a chance to win the Joe Moore Award this year. They feel great about that unit. Max Clare at tight end is another underrated piece of this. I don't know how you're going to defend them. But on the flip side for Penn State, this is the formula that we've seen for Ohio State to win a national title and then Michigan to win the national title. You have a veteran team that you convince, guys that should be in the NFL and could be in the NFL, but because of NIL, you convince them to come back and say, this is the year. You go out and get Jim Knowles, make him the highest paid coordinator in college football. And they are pot committed. All their chips are pushed fully on the table. And last year, talking to James Franklin, you make the point about Kotelnicki. They hired a new athletic director, and James was extremely open to us that he has felt the amount of support he's gotten from above him has completely changed his belief in what he can accomplish there at Penn State. He didn't think they'd get Kotelnicki if they didn't have different leadership. I don't know if he believes they would have been able to keep Drew Aller or their running backs or some of these talented guys without the leadership that they currently have. So that belief can go a long way for Franklin and for the team. Something to be said, guys, up here, though, especially going on the road, the road. Drew Aller struggled against Ohio State. He's from Ohio. He struggled. He hasn't played his best game. He played great. He took some big strides in the Big Ten title game and in the postseason. Thought that was good to see with limited wide receivers. But there's something, I want to see it on the road against Columbus, and all of a sudden he'll make $40 million, $50 million. He'll be a top 5 pick guaranteed if he can play his best football.
I absolutely love this Penn State roster for a lot of the reasons that you guys are discussing. The 2,000-yard backs. I mean, Kyron Hudson, the transfer wide receiver from USC, was one of their best playmakers a year ago. And Devontae Ross, who transferred in from Troy, he's a 1,000-yard receiver. And that's all without even talking about Drew Aller, who's one of the few quarterbacks returning that we talked about. There's so many programs this upcoming year that don't have their quarterback.
7 out of 9, David. 7 out of 9 on our list have a new quarterback, whether it's
and it's the same in the SEC, too. It's not just a Big Ten thing. But when you talk about it being in your head, I just think about Georgia in 2021, and we were doing the J-Boy show from the College Football Hall of Fame, and that Georgia roster was stacked. And we said, well, until I see them beat Alabama, I don't know if they can beat Alabama. And what'd they do in that SEC championship game? They lost to Alabama. And we said, see, there you go. Then they find themselves in a rematch in the national championship. And what happened? Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs finally took care of business, and they won that first national championship in 40 years. So, I want to see Penn State go on the road and win a game like that. And just, Jake, since you place so much importance on the coordinators so far in this conversation, I mean, hit on this for the Buckeyes. You lose Chip Kelly, and the way he dialed up some of those plays last year in our Huddle Up segment, I mean, it was a thing of beauty. But Jim Knowles on the defensive side goes from one program to the other one that we're talking about. How much is that really going to matter when it comes to the Buckeyes trying to repeat and go back to back here for a national championship?
It's huge. I want to kind of get ahead of this real quick with Penn State. They've become tight end university, okay? Iowa, but they've become, and they got a guy in Luke Reynolds that I think is going to be a breakout star at tight end. So I don't hear many people talking about him, but I did want to mention.
I love Tyler Warren so much, dude. Like I was hoping if I was a GM in the NFL, I'd have went all in on Tyler.
And Colston Loveland still went before.
I couldn't believe that, honestly.
Yeah, I apologize for sidetracking there.
You're good.
But it's absolutely. I mean, just for the listeners, a new playbook. Yes, it's still football. You're learning a new language. It's a foreign language, and it's not a one-way street. It's not just the coaches speaking to the players. The players have to be able to communicate and trust their coaches. And that was a big transition from the Michigan game into the postseason for Ohio State. They had that players meeting, and you got complete alignment from the program. And now with 2 coordinators for Ohio State, you're starting from ground zero once again. Brian Hartline he was next in line to be the coordinator, and they've been hesitant for a few years. So the question is what changes? Is he really ready to take that step? Because Ryan Day decided to step back from calling plays last year, and I think that benefited their team. Probably most important than anything, They got such amazing talent.
Studs.
I would love to be a coordinator for Ohio State.
sure.
You know, you can kind of close your eyes and pick a play, and it's likely going to work with the talent they have.
Well, I always say when you got a roster like Ohio State does, especially offensively, the two most important people that are associated with the team are the bus driver and the pilot. Just get them to the game safe, and it should be all right.
Look, I get it. When it comes to Penn State, you bring back Drew Aller, you have two good running backs, but I do think losing Abdul Carter, which I haven't heard mentioned yet, absolute stud. And Tyler Warren, as good as Drew Aller was and those running backs, he was the fixer that came to Penn State. I mean, the dude played quarterback, running back, left tackle. I'm pretty sure I saw him with a headset on the sidelines at one point calling plays. But if Julian's saying is anything worth his salt, like you're saying,
I think he's a stud.
the things Ohio State have running around, I don't care if you're blind and deaf, you could call plays for Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith,
yes,
Quincy Porter,
to win 10 or 11 games, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
To complete the run they went on last year and beat Tennessee the way they did, to beat Texas the way they did, to win a national championship, to beat Oregon the way they did, that's different. That's Chip Kelly. I'm not taking anything away from Brian Hartline. I'm just saying these guys were the coordinators that Ryan Day really wanted to go after for a reason.
sure. And I thought Will Howard caught a lot of flack last year because
Will came
a lot
through.
of people thought
I got to say it. Oh boy came through. Oh boy came
Good
through.
enough to do. Ohio State won a national championship without being able to run the ball,
Yeah, well, and
which is wild.
well,
Two great backs.
with two great backs who are in the NFL now.
But also let's again, and everybody talks about offense, and I know it's the sexy part, and I know it sells tickets and this, that, and the other. But stopping the run, Ohio State's ability to stop the run, to me, was one of the things that really catapulted them in the end to not just win, but beat people to death. Tennessee couldn't do it with Dylan Sampson struggled to. I'm worried about the interior defensive line for Ohio State. And the depth there. Because somebody's going down at 3-tech or shade or nose. Somebody's going down at some
I would
point.
be so surprised if I turned on Ohio State game Saturday and they were just getting their ass whipped between the tackles.
I
would just be surprised.
Early in the season, they struggled against some of these teams. We're like, why aren't they blowing especially early in the game?
Yeah, you remember Akron?
You look up in the fourth quarter and they win by 30, but still.
I would just be surprised. And I'm telling you, the more, and I haven't heard this name get mentioned yet, the more that guy in the sky, Caleb Downs, just starts creeping to that line of scrimmage. You want to talk about a quarterback.
He's good.
If there's ever a quarterback on the defensive side of the ball, it's Caleb Downs. Ohio State might have the two best players in the country.
On each side of the
Caleb
ball.
Downs and Jeremiah Smith. So I get it when it comes to Penn State. You're bringing back a lot of talent. But what David kind of mentioned earlier, I got to see it first.
Put Caleb's hand in the ground.
I got to see it first.
Let's see it. No, it's. Oh, go ahead, Jake.
That's why I had him at number one, too, is I'm like, if there's a tiebreaker, it's sure the home field advantage in that game, but then you have the best defensive player and the best offensive player and probably number one, number two players overall on your roster. Yeah. The interior of the defensive line, they're concerned about it. They understand that there needs to be development. Tyleik Williams, very underrated. That's a big hole to fill. Ty Hamilton, very trusted. They're moving guys from the exterior to the interior, and depth is a serious concern to go alongside of the uncertainty of what level they're going to get of their starting two on the interior.
Yeah, well, we always talk about in college football, kind of the last thing I have is that on the offensive line, like, oh no, bumping a guard out to tackle, that's a totally different world. And it is. Mm-hmm. But on defense, it's opposite. You go from that stand-up edge rusher or being able to play that 5-tech or play that 7 with the tight end there to playing in the interior, like to playing a 2-eye or a 3 or a shade or whatever. That's a totally different world when you get in between those guards. I don't care if you're in a damn bear front. It's a totally different world when you kick guys inside on that defensive line. Mm-hmm. But, all right, anything...
Man, we really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.
Thank you so much, man. And go
Blue. We got to revisit this.
Oh, for sure.
We got to see how it all shakes out after the season.
Oh, man, we'd love to have you on as much as
you should come help us preview Michigan, Oklahoma week 2.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be a lot of fun.
You got my number. Reach out, please.
Jake, tell everybody where they can find your stuff, too. You do a great job.
Yeah, I'm on every social media, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and respond to everybody. Love interacting with the fans. So just search my name on any platform, and you'll see me there. I think I'm verified on each platform, so easy to find me.
Nice.
Well, you're verified in our book as well.
Right.
So
appreciate you guys.
Jake Butt, man. Jake, thanks so much, buddy. Great stuff. Thanks again for coming on, and we really appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
We appreciate you. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let us know in the comments. Whose rankings do you like better, us or Jake's? It's not going to hurt our feelings. Make sure you continue to share the show. We appreciate and like the chances of me not being excited about Damon Williams Jr. and
stoked.
Fernando Mendoza. I'm double stoked.
You're stoked.
We're going. Gone.